Hey, what's up, everybody? BDL44 coming at you with another video. So, thinking Spurs. Dejounte Murray should be an all-star. Derek Wright should be considered for more props in general. Jakob Pertl deserves more props. They got some young players on their team that I really like. Josh Primo is really exciting. Lonnie Walker III is really exciting. Keldon Johnson is exciting players. They have some players that you would want, but they're not really where they want to be as an organization. I kind of look at them almost like I look at the Pacers, really. Kind of in no man's land. Got a bunch of pieces that people would want. Still have their picks. But I think people just like in terms of like voting and just all-star voting and things like that, I just think what you're finding there is that a lot of the people have Spur fatigue. That's what I call it. We've watched them win so many times throughout the last decade, previous era, to it's just like I think a lot of people are just kind of comfortable not giving them their props at this point. Almost like they're kind of happy they're not still going at it, because during the era where the Spurs were winning, as great and as perfected as their style was, they didn't really have exciting players. They didn't really have that jump at you factor. And a lot of times when they were playing the finals, the ratings would kind of be low just because of that. People just didn't really want to see the Spurs. They'd appreciate them, they respect them, but it wasn't like we were trying to run to see them. So now it's like, now that they're down, I think a lot of people are just kind of like happy about it or whatever. That's my theory. But at the same time, you got to understand this. To this very second, they still have one of the best coaches to ever coach sports, period, Greg Popovich. And a lot of players around this league are lacking great coaching. So that should still be a destination where if you're trying to get better, you should want to go. And if you're the Spurs organization, they are really picky about the type of players they want to bring into their organization. You know what I mean? Over the years, they've had certain types of players they want. I don't know if they still see things that way. I don't know if they've gotten away from that or not. But it seems to me that they're just kind of going with the youth movement right now. But they're kind of just literally the forgotten team in the NBA. Now, I'm looking around and I'm saying like a lot of teams are talking about getting Ben Simmons. A lot of teams are considering like Bradley Beal and players like that. I think it's time for the Spurs to start getting their name involved in those conversations. Now I tried the Ben Simmons thing on the trade tracker, and I could not get a trade that would work for me. It was always either less than $1 million off. So if they move it around a little bit, they maneuver, they could get themselves a player on a $33 million contract. But I didn't actually get it successfully done myself. However, there was a lot of different variations I didn't try. I just got tired of it, moved around, got away from it. But nevertheless, they can do it. That's the point. I think they should try, man. I think they should try. I don't know how fans feel about that. Obviously, if you're bringing in somebody like Ben Simmons and you already have Dejounte Murray, assuming he's not a part of the deal, which in my opinion, I would not have him to no deal whatsoever. I would more so try to make a deal surrounding like Derek Wright, Thaddeus Young, and then probably throw in one of those young players that I really, really like that I would rather not give up to make it sweet for whomever I'm trading to. But I think they should try, man. I think they're in that same space with the Pacers to where they just don't have enough to make people care. And a guy like Dejounte Murray needs a co-star that's going to make them as exciting as he is as a player. Because if he were to get out of there, he'd probably be an all-star this year. I don't think there's too many places outside of San Antonio where he wouldn't be considered an all-star. Like, let's say he played for the Clippers, he'd be an all-star. Let's say he played for the Celtics, he'd be an all-star. Played for the Knicks, he'd be an all-star. Lakers, all-star, etc. But if you're the Spurs, as I said, he's like the one untouchable piece. There's no way in hell I'm putting him up for any trade whatsoever. He's my future. And what I want to do is build around him and whoever else I'm able to retain if I were to like not do anything. Or rather, if I were able to make a trade, whoever I was able to retain, of course. So for me, the one player I'd also want to not let go of is Josh Primo. I'm just a big fan of what he can do. I think he's already showing me signs of being one of those smooth kind of players that just can't be touched. 3, 4, 5 years from now, he'll be making all-star teams regularly. I think that's the type of player he's ultimately going to be. So I'm not touching him. That's my backcourt right there. I'm a big fan of Jakob Poeltl as well. And I think ultimately you just like having a center like that who's smart, who could do pretty much everything. It's not going to cost you too much. It's going to outplay his contract more or less. So I try to keep those players. Everybody else, Keldon Johnson, I can move Keldon Johnson. Lonnie Walker, I can move him if I have to. Derek White, I love Derek White as a player, but if I have to move him to get a star, I'm going to do that. They could get some guys, man. Their contracts aren't bad. Thaddeus Young is very productive. Last year, he was extremely productive. And, it's one of those situations where I think he can still help a team right now, a winning team right now, get over the hump. A team like Philadelphia, he could go back there and be his best self, because we remember he started his career there. Now, I don't know if they're in love with that contract. They have their own salary issues and things of that nature. I know they're trying to unload both Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, because both of those contracts are ridiculous. They total about $60 million. I don't see anybody be willing to take on that type of salary with wrapped up in two players. There's no way in hell. I don't see it. But they could definitely move Ben Simmons, of course. And if you're the Spurs, Ben Simmons has his issues. Him and Pop, I don't know. I don't know if they want that at all. But if I'm thinking about building and going forward, I could do a lot worse than Dejounte Murray and Ben Simmons. Now, granted, the shooting would be questionable to say the least. I don't know how they're going to handle that spacing. It's not the greatest fit or whatever. But you talk about some fantastic defense. You talk about a team that you have a solid core. All you would really need to do is surround them with shooters. And you would have a core that would be exciting enough to keep those two players on the map. You couldn't ignore the Spurs if Ben Simmons and Dejounte Murray is there. And that's the moral of the story. You have, if you're the Spurs and you're thinking like me, you want people to be excited about the Spurs. You don't want them thinking about the old era. You want to segue out of that, and you want to shake off Spur fatigue. And how to do that is to acquire someone who's going to attract people just by themselves. You know what I mean? You need a star. You need somebody who's already got star power, not a homegrown guy, because your home is what's making people fatigue. They have to already have that star power. They have to already be that. So the way I see it is, I don't know if Bradley Beal, I just mentioned Bradley Beal because I know he's on the block. I don't know if he would do it. Honestly, no, I don't think so. But a guy like Ben Simmons, yeah, he would. He would. With all of the controversy surrounding his name and with the style of play that he provides on the defensive end, his passing, his ability to entertain, I think he would be very good. And I think Popovich would find a lot of useful ways to make him better. Now, like I said, his mental, I don't know. Him and Pop, that might not work at all. But when you consider what the Spurs organization is about, and you consider how intelligent of a basketball player Ben Simmons is on both sides of the floor, if Ben was in the right frame of mind and he's ready to be himself, there's no question he would dominate and he would bring people to watching the Spurs. Now, again, his weaknesses and all that you have to take into account. I'm not saying this is a absolute go. I'm just brainstorming here. But you want somebody who's going to shake off that Spur fatigue. You don't want to get to a point where Dejounte Murray's thinking, I got to get out of San Antonio in order to be my best self. And if I'm him, I'm already thinking that. Especially if I don't make this all-star team with someone getting hurt or something and, his name being the replacement. If he don't get replacement status and you sit up there looking at Andrew Wiggins running around the all-star game and Dejounte Murray ain't there, I'm looking around, I'm saying, all right, man. All right. I just have to move on. And that's what you don't want to have happen. You don't want that. So, I don't know where the Spurs are. They're not really proactive like that. They're not known for doing things like this. But at the same time, you got to usher your way out of what it is you're known to be in order to get the respect you deserve and to get out of no man's land. You're in no man's land. They're basically the Pacers West. And right now, like I said, their players are good. They got a bunch of players you like, but they're never going to be good enough to win a championship, in my opinion. Not with this core. That's not a championship core, even at its absolute best. When they all develop to being whatever they're going to be, they're still going to have to deal with the Timberwolves. They're still going to have to deal with these young teams like the Clippers, who are going to probably have a lot, Suns, obviously Golden State. Some of these teams are present, so I'm trying to think about the teams that are going to be doing it tomorrow, but they're still going to not be good enough to overcome some of the stuff that's out there. The Grizzlies are obviously going to be around. The Rockets will be somebody tomorrow. The Spurs ain't gonna be good enough to keep up with them. Dallas and Luka and them, they're not gonna be able to keep up with them. So I think it's time to. I'm not saying blow it up because they have a nice core of youngsters, but retool, retool in a big way. Find yourself a number one guy because Dejounte is probably a number two. You're gonna have to find a number one, and preferably somebody who already has their name established. So that's just what I'm thinking about, man. I'm thinking about getting teams out of no man's land, getting teams out of just limbo. And the Spurs are in a much worse position than the Pacers because at least the Pacers, they can have a homegrown guy who could wake up tomorrow and be a superstar based on the fact that he was grown in the Pacer uniform. You know what I mean? That can happen. Spurs, they're not going to get the respect. At the end of the day, that's what we're learning. They're not gonna get the respect. They're gonna be compared to Tim Duncan, and they're gonna be looked at as a boring team even when they're not. Look at how DeMar DeRozan's tenure in San Antonio went. He was good, he was solid, but you forgot about him. It was 3 good years where you honest to God forgot about DeMar DeRozan. Toronto, he was a big man, superstar in Toronto, all this. Went to San Antonio, sleepy. Got up out of there, went to Chicago. He's back to being DeMar DeRozan again. In fact, he's better now than he was in Toronto. Put up 45 points tonight. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's something to that. And I think it's Spur fatigue. I really do. They're going to have to make some moves if they're going to try to shake that off. Because right now, I just don't see no path for them not only to get back to championship glory, but to just be relevant and to make it so that people want to watch them. So that's what I got to say, man. I mean, I don't follow the team well enough to really dive deep or talk about their specifics. I don't know what's going on at all, but I just looked at their roster, did a little trade tracker stuff, and they got some good contracts. A guy like Derek White should get you something. A guy like Keldon Johnson should get you something. You know what I mean? These are guys that can really help teams. Thaddeus Young, like I said, this dude can do everything. Thaddeus Young is a Swiss Army knife personified. He can help. So that's what I think the Spurs should do, man. It's almost trade deadline time. I ain't heard their name, and I should have. They should be looking to wheel and deal and bring some excitement to their franchise, So that's what I got to say, man. Maybe take a swing at Ben Simmons. You never know. I know for a fact they have the pieces that would make Philadelphia at least listen. They at least listen. So that's what I got to say, man. BDF44. Thank you for watching. I'm out.